Well, I got to tell you that this has been an interesting couple of days. In the beauty of it all, we brought the Airstream but haven't needed it. But in the middle of all the damage, I have to say there are a lot of pretty elements of all of the ice. It's just really quite nice. However, we have had our fair share of tree damage, and I grabbed the drone and did a couple of drone shots of what's going on the property. Most of the breakage really seemed to come from the top of the trees. However, some of the trees, if they had 2 or 3 trunks, the limbs would become so heavy that it would just literally split the tree. And then we had a couple of trees that just fell, the whole tree fell. So as I looked around, to be quite honest, when you look at it from above, things don't look quite as bad. When you look at the ground, you'll see the bunches of limbs, but those are really breaking off from the top. If you look at the top of the trees, there's not a lot of big limbs at the top, and the ones that have bent, I'm curious how many of them will recover. That was the only tree that fell, the big tree that fell. But a lot of them just split. You know, the limbs would get heavy and they would just kind of break off. And all of the snow really turned to ice. The ice in the ground out in the lawn is probably 3 to 5 inches thick. And most of the visible damage is obviously on the edges where you can see them. We haven't walked through the woods. I mean, yesterday, about every 10 or 15 seconds, a tree would break, a giant limb would drop. It just absolutely was not, it just wasn't safe to be out. So we just kind of, stayed inside and watched and listened to it happen. But really, when you get above it all, kind of like you're looking at it right now, it really doesn't look like horrible damage. I mean, there's a lot of trees left. So, for a tree company, maybe a day's work, they'll cut them up, they'll chip them, they'll throw the chips back into the woods, and hopefully it might be a day, maybe 2 days worth of work. I think the real job is going to be to figure out where would you prune the tree to make it look somewhat natural after it's been kind of splintered up. So I think that is probably the more time-consuming work, because you want to make sure that you prune it right so it'll grow back right. Because these things, some of these are huge trees. I mean, it's taken many, many, many years, maybe a lifetime to grow like that. So, overall, got a lot of trees left. When you look into the deeper woods there, you see those dark areas. Those are the tops of the trees that have landed on the ground. And if you look at those dark spots, they're at the top of the tree, they're kind of bare. I mean, they look like big sticks. The barn actually is almost a miracle. All of the limbs fell around the barn. And there are plenty of trees to fall on the barn. I just hope nothing falls today. But you can see a lot of them are bent. They're going to have to be cut. The ice is really pretty, but when I see it, my OCD is telling me, oh man, we've got a huge cleanup. But overall, most of these limbs are pretty easy for a tree company to chip. And then as you move through the yard, I grabbed my iPhone and just moved through. I did a voiceover in the music only to kind of cover up the really loud crunching through the snow and through the grass. So some of the limbs have bent over and they're touching the ground, and I doubt they'll ever get straight again. I'm going to guess that those have to be cut off the tree. That big root there was the only big tree that fell, but you can see we really don't have a lot of trees near the house, and I'm really, really glad. They always say best way to have trees around your house is to look at them and not maintain them. So all of the trees around our house are pretty far away. So overall, we were very fortunate, and it's just a big mess. And I don't know how big a job this is for a tree company, but they have the equipment. They can get high, they can prune them up, make them look pretty, and overall, hopefully make the property beautiful again. I think we have plenty of trees, and everything is probably going to be fine. The big trees have survived, and hopefully all the little limbs that broke off, they will grow back. And so honestly, overall, we're thankful. Could have been worse. And I think the barn, that was almost a miracle that nothing fell on top of the barn, because it really probably would have broken and caved in. We just had it painted, and love that little spot, and that's our favorite fire pit of all the places. So it's a mess around the barn, but the barn itself survived just fine. So we are counting our blessings. We are thankful. We're glad it is not worse than it was, and there are people that have had far worse than what we did, and so overall it's honestly not that bad. It's kind of pretty, isn't it? And devastating, but pretty all at the same time. So we'll see when the tree guys can come out. I think they're already scheduled, and it's just a matter of waiting for the roads to clear, and you have to let the trees thaw a little bit, because to be under them right now is very dangerous. Something still could break, and one big limb, as you well know, could probably take your life. So amongst the devastation, there is the beauty and the icicles, and not everything's ugly. In the middle of it all, there's quite a bit of beauty. We are thankful.